In this lesson, we're going to be talking about other network tools. So, as you're going through a forensic examination, you may find it necessary to look at other tools for some network information for a variety of reasons. So, I'm going to show you some different tools that you may need as a forensic examiner to be able to determine some information that's going on the network or some activity that's going on the network. So the first thing I want to show you right now is ipconfig. And ipconfig, and you'll notice I did the /all, and that says show me the settings for all of the network adapters that you have. So ipconfig /all will give me all of the information about the different interfaces or network interfaces that are on this particular system. So you can see it's got a host name, we've got IP routing enabled. It's also not a WINS proxy because that's not enabled. And as we scroll down a little bit, we're looking at the Ethernet adapter, and we've got a description and a physical address, and we've got the IPv4 address, as well as there's an IPv6 address. And then we've got a couple of other adapters down below that, and that's used for different things like the Teredo tunneling interface has to do with IPv4, IPv6 connectivity. So the one you're primarily interested in is the Ethernet adapter local area connection, and it may be called something else. The local area connection is just a name that's configurable that you can change to something else if you want. So there's your IPv4 address, and you'll see we've got a DNS server that's configured as well as a default gateway and a DHCP server. So there's some useful information that we've got stored there. Now let's take a look at some other information here, or another utility called netstat. And what netstat is going to show me is connections that are open to other systems. And what I see here for the most part is I've got communication going on inside my local system. So the 127.0.0.1 is just a loopback address that refers to this particular system. And the foreign address over there is my system name. So I've got my system communicating to my system just across different ports. Actually, if you take a look here, the top two entries map to one another. So I've got 1046 talking to 1047 and 1047 talking to 1046, and the same with the next pair. So it's really just the two. There's a couple of processes that may be talking to one another across the local network or the loopback interface. Now, I could do something like this as an example, and I'm going to get some slightly different information. Not only going to get established here, I'm going to get listening, and you can see on the far right, it says offload state, and it says in host. So actually at the very top here, there's all of these processes or sockets that are listening on particular ports. So I've got like port 135 and port 445, and that has to do with sharing across the network, whether it's files or printers or something along those lines. So that's what those ports have to do with. And there's other ports that are open as well. You can see quite a few of them there. So netstat is helpful for trying to determine whether there are remote systems communicating with this particular system or not. Now, something else I can do here is I can use a tool like NSLOOKUP to look up IP addresses, and sometimes this is useful. So you can see I'm looking up the web server for infiniteskills.com, and you can see I get an answer of 76.12.59.46. So that's another useful network utility as well. Now, I've been doing all of this under Windows, and you may be wondering what I can do under Linux. Really, I can do the same sort of thing. Under Linux, it's called ifconfig as opposed to ipconfig. Ifconfig is going to show me all of the interface configuration. So I've got multiple network interfaces here, and you can see the IP address as well as the network mask and similar sorts of things as I got with ipconfig. Now, what I get with ifconfig is a little bit different than what I got with ipconfig. With ipconfig, I saw the DHCP server as well as the default gateway and some other information. What I can do here is I can just do route, and with route, it will show me the different routes available off this system to other networks and other systems. And you can see there's a default there, and it tells me what the gateway is. And that's the same thing as the default gateway that I got under ipconfig. So the very first entry is my default gateway, and then the others show me the other networks that I'm attached to. So I've got 192.168.1.0 and 192.168.122.0. It shows me on the right-hand side the interface that I'm going to go out in order to get to those particular networks. So I can use root here, and the same sort of utility is available under Windows. You can show the routing tables that are under Windows using that utility as well. So I can also use NSLOOKUP here on Linux, and I'm going to do the same thing as I did under Windows, and you'll see I get the same answer back. I can also do a utility called host, which does the same sort of thing, although in this case it gives me some additional information because it says www.infiniteskills.com is an alias for infiniteskills.com, and then it shows me the IP address for infiniteskills.com, and then it shows me where mail is handled for that particular domain. So I get a little bit more information just because of the way this IP address is configured. Now, I can do things like dig-A, and dig is another DNS query tool that's available under most Unix-like operating systems. You can actually get it for Windows, but it's more commonly found on Unix-like operating systems like Linux. So I'm going to dig-A, and what I'm doing there is I'm saying I want the A record for this particular host name, and it's going to come back and tell me 76.12.59.46, which is exactly what we got up above, and it's going to tell me the server that it used at the very bottom was my local DNS server. Now I can do the same thing with netstat here that I did under Windows, and I get all of the sockets that are open and the different services that are listening here. So I can see that I've got an SSH session open, and I've got a whole bunch of domain sockets which are a little bit different. Those would be local sockets that are communicating with processes on my local system. So again, I've got netstat here under Linux, and some of the flags may behave a little bit differently, or you may call it a little bit differently, but the information that it's going to provide is more or less the same. So that's just a little group of other network utilities that you may find useful, whether you're on a Windows system or whether you're on a Unix-like operating system like Linux.